Welcome to the podcast. It starts with you, with me, Vic O'Farrell. I ask my guests, by understanding their own behaviours and personality style, what impact on their lives, both personally and professionally, has there been? What is it like to live and work with someone of your style? I mean, this is not about labelling people, putting people in boxes, or an excuse for bad behaviour. It's about recognising, understanding and respecting that we're all different. And what impact can you have on others by looking in the mirror? Because it starts with you. Well, happy new year, because this is our first It Starts With You for 2025. And I am delighted to be joined by Rob, who is in sunnier climates than I'm sitting here. I'm feeling very pale today. Rob, rather than me introduce you, would you like to introduce yourself? Let the listeners and viewers know who you are, what you do, but also what your disc profile is.
Yes, first of all, thank you so much for having me. So I'm Rob Hosking, former frontline police officer turned motivational TEDx speaker. But everyone will probably know, there's a bit of a story in between. And my disc profile is I am a DIC. I am red, yellow, blue. So interesting to find out more.
Yeah, well, that actually a great profile, because I quite often find most people are one or two. You do get some with three, but to have a yellow and a blue, which are what I call opposites in terms of personality. So the I and the C. So you've got I, which is very outgoing and interested and influential and in being with other people, but C is reserved and task focused and detail focused. So you might sometimes find when you're doing stuff that there's a slight internal conflict, and then the red, the D part of it, you put yourself under pressure to make sure you get things done and demanding to each other. So yeah, a great. There's no right or wrong when it comes to profile, but it's interesting to see how that has played out in your life, especially when we think about what. Obviously, I know your story, but tell the like say listeners or the viewers about what it was like being on the front line for you serving.
Yeah, the front line was difficult. It was difficult for many reasons. Now, I joined the police at 22 years old, so I was just out of the womb not that long. I was fresh-faced and probably very sheltered in my upbringing, if I'm honest with you. I'm from Northern Ireland, and what my parents saw during the Troubles and things like that was kind of passed down to me, where they probably were a lot more sheltered with my upbringing because of the traumas and atrocities that they saw. And although I didn't see necessarily what they saw, there was still definitely many things that I saw that probably did make you think home comforts were probably the best because the world is a dangerous place, so to speak. So I was very sheltered. So going into the police at 22 years old, it was an eye-opening experience, dealing with all these kind of drug things that you would do on a daily basis. I didn't know what a drug looked like. It never mind understand what drugs were. I didn't have a clue. And seeing the violence, of course, being from Northern Ireland, you'd seen the violence on the TV and you were subjected to generational kind of violence with what you've seen and heard. But being subjected to people being aggressive to me and shouting abuse and actually probably being hated by many people in society, it was just completely foreign to me. And it had a really negative impact on my mental health and well-being overall, to be honest with you, because it was just this negativity. And this negativity just built up where everything I was witnessing was negative. People were only showing negativity towards me. And that's a very difficult thing for somebody who's a positive person and who's quite an optimistic person. So going in 22 years old and all of a sudden seeing this like with hues of hatred come towards me was something that I struggled to get used to. I don't even think I ever got used to it, if I'm honest with you. And I was a police officer for 5 years, from 22 to 27. And I describe my 5 years in three words: stress, trauma, and negativity. So I'm not doing the best advertisement for joining the police service. However, when people probably think like stress and trauma, what did you expect when you joined the police? And they'd be completely right. But the stress was chronic. It was excessive. The trauma was chronic and it was excessive. And I didn't have any coping mechanisms to help with either one. And even when there were coping mechanisms, the culture, the macho culture, and the toxic culture in the service, it dictated that you wouldn't dare use any of it because it would be seen as a weakness, especially as men and around this thing of men mental health. You would not want to see or show any weakness that you couldn't handle your job, you couldn't handle the trauma you've just seen. So you put a mask on and you just got on and just moved on from it. And you can only do that for so long in your life before all this trauma and stress all comes back to you. And this is the case for me. So I had lots of memories that were good, but many memories that were bad. And I've been shaped as a result of my 5 years in the police. And I went through a journey of poor mental health and on the edge of suicide. And just was a very dark place for me because I I lost myself. I think that's probably the best way to put it. And it's probably nice talking about personality and stuff right now because when I think about my career in the police, I lost who I was. Forget about personality. I lost every single aspect of who I was. And there was so much pressure, pressure on 22, 23, 24, 25, 26, 27-year-old to be able to do the job that they were doing when you were looking at your friends who were that age and they were traveling the world after university or, there was a lot more lightheartedness about their life. And I think of my life, I was like, I put myself under pressure right from after university. And although I would say it's shaped me today, it's built my resiliency levels, but it's also impacted me because I think I probably was unable to be a young adult or
Mm.
unable to be a kid for as long as I probably should have and probably what everyone should be. So there's a lot of responsibility on me from such an early age.
So why did you join the force in the first place? And I get you said you had, quite perhaps a sheltered and like you say, Northern Ireland. Not that you're there now, by the way, listeners.
Yeah.
He's in sunny Spain. So what made you join the force in the first place?
It's a good question, and I would love to say I followed my dream and followed my passion, and it was a love story of the generation. But unfortunately, it wasn't. My family were either police or military. That's what all they did. And when I was growing up, I always had this idea of I'll end up in one of them. And I wanted to join the Royal Navy at 18. I went in as a warfare officer, but they were like, right, you're going in straight as an officer. You're only 18, right? We think you need to get more life experience. Go to university, get some life experience, and come back. And they offered me just to join as a normal seaman. And I was like, no, no, I want to go in as an officer. So I went to university and got that life experience. And just things changed. And I was like, maybe the Navy's not for me. And then the police were looking, and my brother texted me and he said, by the way, the police are looking, I'm going to apply. So he applied, and I applied like 2 months after. And then we both joined at the same time. So we were both in the same intake at the same time. And it was just one of those things where I looked at the idea of what success looked like to my family and probably society in general, to be honest with you. A police officer, oh, that's a good career. There's good development and things like that. And I saw that, and I'm a very ambitious person and I like push myself. So when I saw what I believed a job was that I could go up the ranks, there was potential there to just keep climbing. It kind of it it appealed to my sense of competitiveness within myself. It appealed to that aspect. And then knowing that, well, it would be successful in the eyes of my family and things like that, probably just kind of forced me to be like, oh, why not? What's the harm in just putting an application in? And then 5 years later, I realized what the harm was putting in an application.
But that's the way you just described it there about having a career with progression. So that's the blue part of your personality is
Mm.
like, okay, so I've got structure.
Okay.
But the red part of your personality, in terms of the drive, about like, no, like when you said, I'm going in the Navy as an officer. I'm not coming in
Yeah.
as a seaman. I'm coming
Yeah.
in as an officer.
Yeah.
And the yellow probably because it was probably very social. I know a few people who were in the police or, you stop and talk to them. And I do get the pressure on it. But you did talk, and obviously I've spoken to you offline about the trauma side of things. So let's talk to me about when you 22 to 27. So what was happening for you when you were 27? Your pivotal point when you're thinking, I need out of this life?
So there's two kind of big pivotal moments in my life, one with 25 and then one at 27. The 25 one was when I hit rock bottom. I hated my life. I was very, very unhappy, and that probably accumulated with the stress and trauma and things like that. And I just couldn't see any way out of this life that I hated. I felt so trapped. I felt like I couldn't leave because I would let my family down. And if I ever said to my family, "Oh, I'm not really happy," and they're like, "What? Well, what else would you do in your life?" So then it always made me think, "Oh yeah, you're right. I can't do anything else, even though the world's your oyster." And I felt that trappedness and I felt that responsibility, and it really weighed heavy on me. And I came to the point where I'm like, if I can't escape by quitting my job, I can only escape by taking my own life, unfortunately. That's how unhappy I was. Now, when I look back, I realized it wasn't that I hated life. It was just that I hated my life and the way it looked. But I couldn't see any way out. And I remember one day in July 2018, I woke up about 3 p.m. having slept all day. And I walked along the hall and so I was going to go downstairs to take my own life. And I thought, this is it. I didn't care about my family. I say I didn't care. I didn't think about my family. They weren't in my fault. It was just to get this pain to stop, get this trauma to stop. And as I walked down the hall, I remember my dog met me along the way. And Louie looked up at me with those big brown eyes that he's got, and he gave me one big lick. And it was that lick that just snapped me out of it. Because I thought to myself when I was looking at Louis, I was like, wait a minute, how could I leave you? As I said, I didn't think about our family, friends, or colleagues. But that dog looking up at me, I was like, I can't leave you. Because Louis and I did everything together. And I thought, you need me and I need you. Who would give you that love and attention that I could? And I'm literally here today because of that lick and because of Louis. But I would describe myself as a functioning depressive. I wore a mask. I didn't tell anybody. Nobody ever knew how much of a rock bottom I hit until last year when I started opening up about it. So that's yet again a very, very big burden to carry on and to take with you. And so I struggled on for a couple more years, this functioning depressive. And then on my last ever shift, now I didn't realize this would be my last ever shift until it's transpired that it was. But on my last ever shift, I witnessed a 21-year-old male take his own life. And I was there for him as he took his last breaths in this world. And such a very difficult thing to just, first of all, watch, never mind just to be there and be so helpless and unable to save him. Just horrible, horrible, horrible. And it's something that will live with me for the rest of my life. However, 5 hours later, my colleague then had a heart attack on shift and died. And I remember for the second time in that day, I was overlooking somebody as the paramedics were giving him CPR to no avail. And I just thought to myself, what am I doing? What is this life? That people, they say, it's this, let me get this research right. I think it says police officers will experience between 400 and 600 traumatic events in their career, compared to a normal member of the public who will experience between 3 and 4 in their life. And that last shift was a perfect example where I was like, wait a minute, what is this? Like, people don't experience this whole trauma in their whole life, never mind just in one shift. And my colleague, he had 29 years service, 1 year left until retirement. And he'd often talk to me about his plans for the future, what he was going to do with his wife, the traveling they were going to do. I just saw that somebody was putting off living until a retirement that may never come. And I looked at my own life and I was like, 27? I'm acting like this is my life and I've only got 1 year left until retirement. I just have to keep going. I was 5 years in. I still have 25 years in this job. And it just changed everything about me. And it made me look in the mirror and understand, wait a minute, Rob, who actually are you? What do you want? What impact do you want in this life? Who do you want to help? And what do you want to do that will make yourself proud? Like, these are the kind of things I was asking myself. And the answers were not what I was doing. I was not doing what I loved. I was not doing what I was passionate about. And I was doing something that just only had negative impacts on my mental health and well-being. So I made changes in my life and I quit the job and I ended up as a motivational speaker helping people in a different way. But I definitely followed a passion for me where I never followed a passion before in my life. And I think I was probably driven by that red personality trait of success and the drive to climb the ladder and see that progression. I was driven by that. But yeah, I've realized that my red personality can actually come out in different ways by still following my passion. And I've learned that the hard way.
Oh, um, that's tough to hear and listen to. And for anybody who's watching or listening to this, if this is triggering, I know I have put trigger warnings in the show notes. Please do reach out to Rob, to myself, or to anyone that you do need to. But that is a lot, a huge amount for anybody to go through at any age, but especially at such a young age, because I think the older we get, I don't know, I just feel the older that I've got, the more I can deal with death,
Yeah,
because you get more of it,
yeah,
basically.
100%. Yeah.
But that's, you know, well, am I allowed to ask you how old you are now?
32.
Okay,
So
so you've been out for 5 years.
yes.
So what was it then, and what you do now, talking about especially men's mental health, which is
Yeah.
really, really important because of the high statistics of young men taking their own lives. But what was it that you thought, oh, well, go and talk about it? How did you start to become, a motivational speaker? And you've done a TEDx. I think you've been on Chris Evans' Virgin's Breakfast Show. You're going everywhere. So
Yeah.
how did that come about?
To be honest with you, a long process of dealing with my traumas because someone's told me once, never allow your stage to be your therapy session where you have to deal with your traumas before you start talking about it. Now, I remember in 2020 when I left the police, I did not know what I wanted to do in my life. I didn't know what really was going to suit me. But I remember writing on one piece of paper, just a single piece of paper, just this sentence, and I said, "Do a TEDx talk," and that was it. I didn't know what I'd speak about. I didn't know how I'd speak about it because I couldn't even speak about my colleague's death or that last shift in general or my own um, wishing to take my own life. I couldn't speak about it without breaking down into tears. I just couldn't do it. So I didn't know how it would look, but I just knew that that was the vision that just kept coming towards me. And I then through those years, so I did the TEDx talk in 2023, so 3 years after I wrote that down. I guess the 3 years between that was just time for me to heal, time for me to live a bit of life, if I'm honest with you, because I was in a job that it took control of my life. It took every minute of my day, technically, because whether I was on shift or not, the mental toll that the job was having on me, I brought it home because that job you can't not bring it home. So I think I enjoyed life a little bit. And, COVID, we were in lockdowns and all for 2020, and it was actually a really nice time for me in a sick and twisted way that may sound. But, it was a nice time for myself personally because the world slowed down and I was able to slow down with it. And I was able to just kind of chill a bit for the first time for a long time. And although yes, there was lots to worry about, but it was just a nice time for me to kind of reflect. And throughout those 3 years, I then started to gradually heal from my traumas. Now I kept getting setbacks where I was getting these PTSD symptoms, and I was taken to the hospital with chest pains. So all the warning signs were there, but it was all because I didn't speak about my mental health. I didn't speak openly about it. And it was eventually, I think from one of the trips to the hospital, I realized, wait a minute, I need to see someone about this because I was getting night terrors. I was just having horrific dreams. I was waking up sweat covered and everything like that. It was just horrible, horrible time. So I just started then getting some gradual help and I went to a silent counseling session and I've done other therapy and they've helped me in different ways, and the silent counseling session especially was such an incredible experience that it made me feel like a brand new person, if I'm honest with you. But yeah, so I started to heal from my traumas, and one of the big things I found for healing with my traumas was to talk about them. I had to eventually, after the silent counseling session, I thought the next step was to talk. Now, I studied history at university, and studying history at university, you you had to do lots of presentations and things like that. And it was always something that I got top marks in, and I always loved doing it. I always got excited, like, okay, I've got a presentation about Charles II, right? Happy days. Looking forward to this. And I absolutely loved it, and I loved history anyway, but I just loved the presentation part. And as I was healing, I was like, wait a minute, my passion is motivational speaking. I'm good at it, in terms of, public speaking and the presentations in history. I was like, why don't I give it a shot and mix it all in together and create this career for myself? So that's what I did. And it was just a simple thing of opening up about it on LinkedIn. LinkedIn, we were talking before this. It can be a difficult place, but it can also be a very powerful place to it can be a very powerful stage to get noticed and just to help yourself along the way, especially with this kind of stuff with mental health. I needed people to see my story because I knew that my story was going to be impactful. But I remember I wrote it out on my phone, the post, and it took me for ages just to post it. I was like, oh, do I post it? Do I not? It took so long, and then eventually I did it. And the traction it got, it was just unbelievable. And that's when I first realized, wait a minute, people are interested in my story because they were starting opening up too. They're like, "Oh, I'm so glad you've done this now. I've experienced similar things and all this." And I was like, "This is it." I've always loved helping people in the police, and 90% of our calls in the police were mental health related. And I loved that because I always loved helping people in their different times of crisis. Always loved being there for people. So yet again, when I started putting all these things together, it just made sense. Where I'm like, I can talk in public. I can motivate people, and I can talk about something that I'm really interested in, which is also mental health. And it's helping people in different ways, whether it's in their personal lives, but also in business, where we can create happier, healthier teams and organizations. It's been a journey and a half full of recovery and therapy. But once I did that, it's just been transformational because now I know that the power in my pain, the power in all the struggles that I've been through is that it can help people.
Mm,
And once I understood that, it was the game changer. Once I understood that a negative can be turned into a positive for others, I didn't look back.
mm. But like you say, it's also been a negative that's turned itself into a positive for you, your career and
Yeah,
everything that you do now. Um, just, thankful for your dog,
I know.
really, and that face lick. Um,
Yes.
I hate it when my
So
dog does that. I'm always like, oh, I've
yeah.
seen what you've been licking, boy.
Yeah.
Um, but it's like you say, I mean, just coming back to there to, like you say, putting a powerful post out on LinkedIn and the traction that you got. We were talking before we started recording about the pressure of social media. And I was saying that I felt it very much in lockdown as somebody who runs their own business was suddenly like, oh my God, my diary is like everyone just emptied. I need to be out there. And there was an app called Clubhouse, which I know you didn't know about, but everything suddenly was just like everyone was everywhere, and there was a real competition to get your post like getting noticed and suddenly feeling. And I said to you, that was when I had a bit of burnout situation going on because I just felt that I was on everything all the time, so I turned off notification. Actually, I've deleted everything, and then when it's back on my phone now, I have notifications off. But you were talking about the pressure of being authentic because I know, obviously, I see more of your posts on Instagram than I do on LinkedIn, and you are always talking about being authentic. And then some people go, "Oh, that word so authenticity bandied about so much." But you said that you don't see it as much as you'd like to see it.
Yeah. That's definitely true. And whether even both platforms, whether it's Instagram and LinkedIn, there's so many things I see that it's just a red flag where it's like that's inauthentic because I'm pretty sure I saw that similar post from somebody the other day, from somebody completely different. And I know that we all, we'll talk about leadership and teamwork and all these things with motivational speakers will talk about, and there may be some overlap. But I always think when you read someone's post, you should be able to say, oh, that post is from Rob. no matter what, blind, if I read that blind, I'll know Rob's done that post. And I just think nowadays, especially when I look at LinkedIn, if I read posts with my eyes closed, I'm like, who's that? Like, it could just be anybody because people aren't authentic. And I did a post actually the other day about do it your way. And I've been told, because, the Chris Evans show and some of the other public appearances I've done and some of these personal well-being events I've attended as a speaker, speaker bureaus and my agent, all they were like, you've done stuff differently. You've done a different path.
Mm.
And I'm like, yeah, but I didn't know what path to follow. So I just decided to do it my way anyway. I just decided I'll just do it the way I wanted to do it. And I think that's the best way. And it's like probably the best lesson to go into 2025 with, where do it your way. You may see many people who seem successful, but they've probably done that through their own genuine selves, where not just because they've done it a certain way, it doesn't mean that if you follow that way, you're going to be successful. We cannot forget about this power of authenticity. Find your own path. Understand, well, does this feel right for me? Does this feel like it's aligned to my values, this path that I'm going to follow? If it does, if it's aligned to your values, if it's aligned to your core beliefs, trust me, the traction that you get from it will be so much more than when you followed a standard ChatGPT kind of post where everyone else is doing it. These, especially in a world with ChatGPT and AI, don't get me wrong, there's many positives to it, but I think in this world, we're seeing lack of authenticity because let's face it, we can all probably spot a ChatGPT post on Instagram or LinkedIn, and I mean that's fine, but people should also make sure that they edit it enough that they're still bringing their personality across. And I see people not doing that, and I just think your personality is ChatGPT. Forget about red, blue, and green. Like it's ChatGPT. And I think that's sad because authenticity will always win in everything. If you're a customer, if you're a business, you will always want and be drawn to people who are authentic because that's what stands you out. Forget about, I talk about leadership and it's this certain type of leadership, or I talk about this and these are my experiences, which is unique. Your personality will get you more, whether it's as a speaker or any other business that you do. Your personality always has to shine because people buy from people, not a post that everyone's done. It's your personality that will sell the most.
Yeah, not ChatGPT.
Not
Like you say, there's
ChatGPT.
lots of positives around it, but it's very much about using that and then editing it so that it is your
100%.
voice.
100%.
Yeah. So I mean, I'm with you. But when you talk about your values, there's so many people that I speak to who don't actually know what their core values are, and it's like it's helping people to understand what that is because when I talk about personalities and I can talk about conflicts in terms of potential conflicts between the red and the green and the D and the S and the yellow and the blue and the I and the C. But it's like you could have the same personality as your colleague, but if your core values are opposing, you'll not understand why you're reacting in a certain way. And it's being able to help, like you say, work through with people on that. What are your values then? What drives you?
What drives me, spontaneity, freedom, challenge, the revs coming out there, and self-belief. They're probably my four. Um, Confidence is the big thing for me, where I just in life in general, I always believe that I believe in my strengths and believe in my ability.
Mm,
And sometimes people might say it's unshakable confidence, and I've probably been brought up to believe that it is unshakable because my family have been very good with helping my confidence as I've grown up. And my mom in particular has always said, people will tell you in your life what you can't do. So you need to be able to tell yourself what you can do. Because if you listen to other people, 9 times out of 10, especially in society nowadays, people don't want to see you succeed too much. Because we always see that, and we're seeing even that with Stephen Bartlett now. And I always think this where people will celebrate people and they will jump on the bandwagon and like this person's brilliant, this person's brilliant. And I always think, wait for it, because the tide will always turn on these people where all of a sudden be some articles that will be written about him in a negative way or things. And now all this stuff about his podcast, about what he's sharing, he's not challenging all these health. things and all that, it's not challenging. And I'm like, it's funny, no matter what, people will always have a limit of how far they want you to succeed until they want to bring you down. It's just a human
Mm,
trait. I don't know why, it's just a human trait.
mm,
So I've always believed that I have to have unshakable confidence, but not in an arrogant way, not to be like, oh, I'm just going to be confident in everything I do. I also know what I'm good at. And it's about identifying my strengths and being like, well, you know what? I know these are my strengths through whether it's feedback or just through my own self. Always go back to your strengths. And if you are having that little shake, I'm like, hold on, this is the list that I'm very good at. Remember that. Remember, go back to the experiences that you've had where you've proved that you're very good at these strengths. So yes, confidence is a big one for me, and I have that self-belief in myself. But freedom and spontaneity, you can start seeing why I was unhappy in the police because at 22, I couldn't even spell core values. Now I know what a core value was, but I just didn't know. But I knew who I was, but I just
mm.
didn't put it into core values. And I think this is the most powerful thing about core values because back then I didn't like being told what to do. I liked having freedom. I didn't like being, that regimental kind of way that you'd see in the military and the police. I didn't like that kind of stuff. But I didn't think, well, why do I not like that kind of stuff? What's the word? What's the value that it's linked to? And if I'd done that, I would have found out, wait a minute, it's freedom, it's spontaneity. That's why I don't like these things, which then would have made me think the police will not have been for me because they cancel my days off to attend court and short staff. Like your life is in their hands. But because I didn't ask myself these questions, because I didn't highlight the core values, I ended up living an unaligned life, which then made me so unhappy. So, yeah, it's about understanding what makes you happy. So now, know, being self-employed probably was always going to be in my remit because freedom and spontaneity can come from being self-employed. And there's a reason why I live in Spain too. Like I've done things the way I want to. So it's those two are very, very key for me.
Mm.
And the other one, challenge. Yeah, I just need to be challenged in life. That definitely comes from the red energy where I am very driven. And if I get bored at something, all of a sudden I've lost interest because I'm like, it's not challenging me, it's not stimulating me. And yet again, that's probably why self-employment probably works for me because it's definitely a challenge every single day. It's always a challenge. But in the police, you were doing the same things day in, day out, and people might be surprised to think I wasn't getting challenged in the police. But as a normal response officer, 90% of the job you did was the same stuff and the same people day in and day out. It was not challenging. Doing the simple report of a vandalism for the 20th time in a week was not challenging, or, you know, I just wasn't getting stimulated in that way. And when I don't get stimulated in that challenge kind of way, I then feel myself getting a little bit lazy. I then feel my energy kind of goes a bit and it just stifles me completely. So anything that I do in life, I need challenged, professionally and personally. So yeah, they shape who I am as a person for sure.
Yeah, yeah, and the word you actually used there was misaligned, and it's not sustainable. If and so we need to work as humans in the workplace to our strengths in terms of our personalities, but also so that we are aligned to our values. But that's not to say that, if you have an organization that has one set of values and you have a different set of values, that you can't actually, when you understand why they drive you and what's driving you, then you can actually work with them. So yeah, interesting. But that's all the stuff that I do as well, which is why it's great. Um, Rob, I could talk to you for hours, but
Yeah,
I do make these podcasts about 30 minutes, and we
yeah.
are coming to the end there. So, I'm obviously sorry to hear of your story and your trauma, but I'm delighted that you are using it to educate the world.
Mhm.
So if people want to get hold of you, what's the best way that they can get in contact?
Yeah, so if you get me on Instagram or LinkedIn at Rob Hosking Official, and my website is www.robhosking.co. I've also got YouTube, which is also Rob Hosking Official, just to keep it all right. So any of the platforms, Rob Hosking Official. I'm not on Facebook. Me and Facebook aren't friends, and I am on TikTok, but yeah, gaming and TikTok are a working relationship, so we'll see about that.
Well, all of those details are in the show notes if you want to go find them. Rob, it's been an absolute pleasure to have you on the show. Thank you
Thank you.
for being here.
Thank you so much.
And here's to the rest of 2025. Bye for now. How has this conversation had an impact on you? What have you learnt? What will you do differently? Do leave a review on Apple or Spotify on It Starts With You podcast. And also leave a comment down below. Do also then connect with me on social media. I'm on Instagram, Facebook and LinkedIn. And why not even join the Facebook group It Starts With You and keep the learning ongoing. Thank you for listening.